Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today we're finna react to they could have won in 94 and 95. Obviously, we talking about the Bulls here, but this is a Johnny Arnett video. Without further ado, let's get right into it.
Today's video is about one of the most highly discussed basketball theories in NBA history. Would the Chicago Bulls have won the championship in 1994 and eventually in 1995 if Michael Jordan had never retired in the summer of 1993? He left the game he loved to go play another game he loved, baseball, fulfilling his father's dream after his tragic passing. The thing is, there's a lot of things at play with this hypothetical situation that a lot of people usually don't consider, and today I wanted to tackle some of those aspects. Now, one thing is for certain, who the Bulls would have been going up against in the NBA Finals if they theoretically made it in 1994 and 1995 wouldn't have changed, as Hakeem Olajuwon's Rockets were the back-to-back NBA champions coming out of the Western Conference. Seeing that the Bulls are an Eastern Conference team, they wouldn't have seen them until the NBA Finals. Therefore, Houston's trajectory certainly wouldn't have changed, at least until that point. Now, before we get into this hypothetical situation, we first have to look at what the Bulls lineup looked like when Michael Jordan was retired. The first season after Jordan had retired was actually a really impressive year for Chicago. They made several acquisitions, as they had signed the perimeter shooting assassin Steve Kerr. They signed the versatile small forward Tony Kukoc to an 8-year deal, and they signed Bill Wennington to be a backup center. This team was extremely deep, as it had much of the supporting cast of the Bulls' first three-peat, and it had some of the quality pieces of their second three-peat. Due to the fact that this team was well coached by Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen had a career year, and they were extremely deep, they won 55 games in that regular season, and made it all the way to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals before they were controversially eliminated by the New York Knicks. Their 93-94 season was certainly better than their 94-95 season, as their second year after Jordan's departure was a lot more tumultuous, as there was chemistry issues, execution issues, and there was the lack of Horace Grant, who had left in the offseason and had signed with an Eastern Conference contender in the Orlando Magic. Due to this, Chicago was really struggling up until Jordan returned with 17 games left in the regular season. As most of you all know, Michael Jordan did help his Bulls to make it into the playoffs before they were eventually eliminated by Shaq, Penny, Horace Grant, and the Orlando Magic. One of the most common narratives about this season is that Michael Jordan wasn't yet back into basketball shape. Even in the Last Dance documentary, Michael Jordan and his physical trainer talked about how he was still in baseball shape. He hadn't quite got rid of his baseball body and got back into his basketball form, and because of that, he wasn't quite at 100% just yet. Do I agree with that narrative? Yes, to a certain extent. Jordan was definitely a little bit rusty, but with that being said, he was still a monster in those playoffs, even if you include the fact that they lost. Yes, he did have that iconic moment where he made a crucial turnover when things mattered the most. But after that point, Jordan was still efficiently averaging around 30 points per game while filling up the stat sheet and playing great defense. So although MJ was not at 100%, I do think it's a little overblown at times about the quality of shape he was in and about how well he performed. Again, one of the biggest issues for that 1995 team was their lack of an inside presence. With the absence of Horace Grant, who was now on the opposing side of the court, the Bulls really struggled with interior defense and with interior rebounding. And that was an aspect that Shaq and Grant took full advantage of. But let's refocus and look back at 1994. The Bulls were coming off of their first three-peat, and yes, Jordan was extremely tired after that three-peat. But with an opportunity to win 4 straight, and with some recent acquisitions, I think they would have been well equipped to do so. This is one of the aspects that people almost never talk about, If Michael Jordan had been on the 93 to 94 team, that would have probably been the deepest Chicago Bulls team that they had ever had. Think about it. They would have had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Horace Grant. But they also had a sharpshooter in B.J. Armstrong, who was one of the best snipers in the entire league and who was in his final season with the team. And then they had also acquired another great sniper who ended up being one of the most efficient three-point shooters in NBA history, which was Steve Kerr. And then they added Toni Kukoc, who was one of the greatest sixth men in NBA history and who was a versatile and long small forward / power forward, who could also do some perimeter shooting of his own. Again, there's a reason why this team was able to win 55 games without Michael Jordan and was able to compete with some of the best teams in the entire league. Also consider the fact that Scottie Pippen was in the very prime of his career. Now I gotta mention, some people in the comments might try to point out that the Bulls might not have been able to acquire Steve Kerr, Bill Wennington, and Toni Kukoc if Michael Jordan was still on the roster. But I actually disagree with that, because in the 94 to 93 season, Jordan was still technically on the Bulls' payroll, as he was making $4 million, which made him the 5th highest paid player in the NBA. You heard that correctly, Michael Jordan was a top 5 paid player in the NBA, even while he was playing baseball.
Damn.
So from a salary cap standpoint, nothing really changes. There's no reason why Jordan being on the roster would have hindered the Bulls' chances of acquiring Kukoc, Kerr, and Wennington. If MJ was on this extremely talented squad, I have no question that they would have won in the high 60s or possibly even 70 games with this group. I'm also confident that they would have steamrolled through the Eastern Conference. As always, New York would have been a little bit of a battle, but they went to 7 games with the Chicago Bulls without Michael Jordan. Now, as you all know, the Houston Rockets, led by Hakeem Olajuwon, would be waiting in the NBA Finals. And historically, that was one of the toughest matchups for the Chicago Bulls. Between the years of 1991 and 1993, Houston dominated Chicago in the regular season. Even Michael Jordan has spoken in the past about how Hakeem Olajuwon was one of their toughest matchups, as guys like Bill Cartwright didn't have a chance going up against the Dream. Anybody who knows basketball firmly believes that the Dream would have got his and would have put up monstrous numbers in this series. But the thing is, I don't know if that's enough to make up for everything else.
Facts.
As an out-of-conference matchup, the Bulls and the Rockets went up against each other twice in that 1994 regular season. And the Bulls actually split the series with the Rockets, as each team won a relatively close game. It was already pretty competitive, but if you give Michael Jordan in the prime of his career a prime Scottie Pippen, a still strong Horace Grant, and the best and deepest supporting cast that he's ever had, then I have very little doubt in my mind that the Bulls would end up winning their 4th straight championship. I think they would have been heavy favorites in that series, and personally, that's what I would have put my money on with confidence. So yes, if MJ had not left to play baseball, I believe he'd have at least 7 NBA championships and would have completed a historic four-peat where he had defeated Hakeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets. But the thing is, things get a lot more interesting in 1995. Because in that offseason, Horace Grant had left the Chicago Bulls for the Orlando Magic. And again, we saw what happened in reality when Jordan rejoined the Bulls with 17 games left in the regular season. Some Bulls fans might suggest that Horace Grant would have stuck around if he had just won his 4th straight championship.
Exactly.
And although that makes sense, money was a big factor in that decision for Grant. None of us can say for certain outside of Horace whether or not he actually would have left the Bulls if Jordan was still around. But seeing that Orlando made Grant one of the highest paid players in the NBA, I think it's fair for us just to assume for this video that he still ends up leaving the Bulls, which again leaves Chicago very lacking in the interior.
Gotta get your money.
Houston had also made a major acquisition, as they had acquired Clyde Drexler from the Portland Trail Blazers to help them try to win their 2nd straight championship.
But does that happen now with the Bulls beating them? You have to think about it. Do the Rockets actually make these moves? Do these moves still happen for the Rockets, though? Think about it. They lost. You think Clyde Drexler, if they can't beat the Bulls, and you got to also take into account that damn near everybody in the league feared Michael. Damn near everybody in the 90s feared Michael. They didn't talk shit to him. They didn't try to get on his bad side. They called him Black Jesus. If that ain't fear, then I don't know what is, man. Because clearly he struck fear in their hearts. So you think Clyde gonna go to the Houston Rockets if they couldn't beat Michael? If they couldn't beat Michael, Clyde would probably just have finished out his career in Portland. Realistically.
Now here's something people need to remember. The Houston Rockets in 1995 had won their second straight championship in reality. But they were not this juggernaut type team. They actually had an underwhelming regular season, as they finished that year with 47 wins and 35 losses. And then, even in the postseason, they had to fight tooth and nail just to make it all the way to the NBA Finals. In the first round against the Utah Jazz, they defeated Utah 3-2. And then in the Western Conference semifinals against the Phoenix Suns, they barely won that series in 7 games. And then in the Western Conference Finals, in a tough battle against David Robinson, they ended up winning in 6 games. Yes, they swept the Orlando Magic in 4 games in the 1995 NBA Finals, and that is the iconic series that everybody remembers. But before that, every other series was basically a really tough match that they were barely able to overcome. But again, Chicago wasn't at full strength either. Remember, the Bulls don't have Horace Grant. They hadn't acquired Dennis Rodman until the following year, basically meaning they have no strong power forward position. And then at the center position, they're also weak in 1995, as Bill Cartwright was no longer with the team, meaning that the Bulls had a center rotation of Will Perdue and Bill Wennington. Neither of those guys are incredible players on offense or defense, and Akeem Olajuwon would have ate them alive in 1995. As great as Jordan would have been, and as great as Pippen would have been, they had some serious holes that could be exploited. They would have lost the battle of the boards, both offensively and defensively, and as far as rim protection and points in the paint, it wouldn't have been even close. Due to this, I honestly believe that even if Michael Jordan had never retired, and had been around for the full season in 1995, they still would have lost to Akeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets in the 1995 NBA Finals.
I don't agree with that. Because, like I said, these niggas feared Michael. Imagine if this nigga four-peated. If this nigga Michael four-peated, ain't nobody trying to... Boy, Mike is feared. Bro, even when the Orlando Magic did beat the Chicago Bulls in 95, they feared that nigga. They beat him, but they feared him at the same time. It was Horace Grant's hatred of Jordan that got them over. But think about it. If this nigga four-peated, this nigga is God at this point. I don't see a scenario where they lose, especially when you have Jordan at his all, especially when you have Jordan at an all-time high. Jordan is in his fucking prime. Scotty's in his fucking prime. It doesn't matter who's on that roster. They still gonna get shit done. They gonna strike fear in your heart. I don't agree with that. And like I said, I don't think the Clyde Drexler move happened. I think Clyde would stay put, which would help Houston, which would pretty much make Houston pretty much a lackluster team that probably would have got eliminated in the first round. More than likely, first or second round. If anything, I think Barkley and Michael running back in 95. That's what I think. I think Barkley and Michael running back in 95. I think it goes to 7 games, but Michael still come out on top. That's my realistic theory.
Again, we're talking about Michael Jordan, And in reality, he has a perfect undefeated record in the NBA Finals, so you can never count him out. But if you ask me, if he had never retired in the summer of 1993, I think he ends up with 7 championship rings instead of 6. He would have won 7 championships in the span of 8 seasons, assuming that Horace Grant still leaves in 1994, and Dennis Rodman still joins in the summer of 1995. But that's just my opinion based on the information we have and based on the matchups. So what do you guys think? Would the Bulls have won the championship in 1994 and 1995 if Michael Jordan had never retired the first time? And how do you think that result would have changed his legacy? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
I stated my opinion. I think Jordan goes on an 8 year winning streak. I think he pulls off the 8 years. Either he pulls off the 8 years, or by 95, Jerry what's the dude name? Jerry Krause. Krause probably ends up blowing the team up earlier than expected. Either those two scenarios. I don't see Michael losing to anybody. Like I said, I think Clyde to Houston never happens. Barkley and Jordan running back. They take it to 7 games. They win there. Krause starts getting a little. Jerry Krause starts getting a little, in his head a little bit. Like, I just pulled off a 5-peat. I think it's time to blow this team up. I think his ego starts getting in the way, and they start because Krause started hating on Phil by 96, I believe. I believe by 96, that's when Krause and Phil Jackson started getting into it. So if anything, by 96, I think Jerry Krause's ego gets the best of him on that 5-peat, and he ends up destroying the Bulls on his own. I think that's what happens, but I digress. Anyways, though, let me know what y'all think down in the comment section below. Get back to you today. Peace out.